Hey, good morning, friends, and welcome to the main object big book study of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am an alcoholic. My name is David. Good to see you all and be here with you this morning. I've asked our friend Anthony to get us started by reading the AA preamble. Anthony, I'll bring that up now. There we go.
Yeah, good morning, family. Anthony O, alcoholic. This is the AA preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share the experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help others, alcoholics, to achieve sobriety. Thank you, David.
Anthony, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And now I'll ask you all to join me in having a moment of silence for the still sick and suffering alcoholic in and out of the room, followed by the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So, welcome everybody. It's good to see all 30 of you this morning. So early for most of us. So, really impressive. And we are, for those who may not have been here previously, we're a line by line big book study, so we're going slowly through the texts, and and one of the things that we do, and this info will be in the chat as well, so I'm not going to not going to dwell on it that long. Is we categorize the text as we go along. We use highlighters and we really break it down into 5 categories: questions, directions, and explanations, promises, warnings, and history. And as I said, that info will be in the chat as well. So, and what that does is the main focus or the main purpose of doing all of that and going slowly through the text. It's not so much about analysis paralysis. It's actually quite the opposite. It is when we take our time and really look at almost each word, what each word meant, a deeper meaning of the text really starts to open up to us, and in such a way that, at least in my experience, it really shifted my relationship, not only to the book, but my relationship with Alcoholics Anonymous, my understanding of this message that God has graced me to carry to other people, and the spiritual program of recovery. And that's something we'll definitely see today as well, that focus on the spiritual aspect, or the spiritual dimension, or I should say the spiritual nature of what we're doing here. So the format is that I will share on the text, and just if you're following along, if you have your book, we don't display the book if you've not been here before. We don't put it up on the screen. The assumption is that we're all working from our own big book and following along and making notes and highlighting as we go along. And we'll be starting on page 69 and near the bottom, where it says, whatever our ideal turns out to be. And the hope is, my aspiration is that we will actually finish out the chapter, how it works, And so next week we will begin into action. And so I hope to share up until about 7 a.m. Eastern Time. And then we'll open it up for your thoughts and questions and discussion and all of that. And the meeting's being recorded because we have a YouTube archive of our meetings. Just my part is recorded, so that way, if anybody is new or they're a little bit queasy about having themselves recorded, you don't need to worry. And only the audio is recorded as well, no video at all. So we stay pretty firmly rooted within the traditions. And just one quick announcement, which if you've been here recently, you've heard it. The just for logistical reasons, nothing beyond that. The name of the meeting is going to be changing December 3rd, and it's going to be the Conscious Contact Big Book Study. And the reason is it's because of other meetings that I started and I chair as well. It's just easier and less confusing, I think, for everyone. And so that said, why don't we jump in? And again, on page 69. Now, remember, I just want to summarize where we are with this because in the previous section, Bill broached a topic that for some of us could be uncomfortable and potentially controversial, and that is our need for an inventory of our sexual behaviors. And I know that as a newcomer, when I saw that, I absolutely balked. I was 24 years old when I got here, and fancied myself a bit. Let's just say that alcohol led me to fancy myself as a bit of a Casanova when I was out there, and I left a lot of wreckage. So the thought of having to inventory that behavior and look at it and make amends filled me with a lot of fear. And I guess you could almost say a reservation. So so many of us might feel like I do, and or I did, I should say, and that the need for a sexual inventory is something we'd rather avoid, or at best, treat in a superficial or indirect manner. What Bill does, which I think is just absolutely masterful, he quickly attempts to dispel our discomfort by insisting that AA doesn't judge anyone's sexual conduct or their behavior. The more important issue he notes is to put our focus on not so much the behavior, like what we did, but the harm we have caused and the wreckage that we've left in our wake. So the non-judgmental approach, I think, does two key things. One, it helps us to remain open and willing to look at a topic we'd rather just quickly shut the door on. And but even more importantly, by adopting this non-judgmental approach, what he does is he opens the door to looking at what he feels is the real issue that's going on here, and I have to agree with him, and that is our relationship with God, and it's the result. Our sexual conduct, he points out, is just like a lot of other aspects of our alcoholism, a product of our sexual malady. There's a Freudian slip. Our spiritual malady, and as such, it demands that our solution remain firmly rooted in our relationship with God. So Bill concludes the chapter by summing up all our efforts at inventory so far. And here's the wild thing. We're only at this point when we finish the chapter, we're only halfway done the inventory process, because obviously what we've not done yet, which is what the beginning of the next chapter really focuses on, is we haven't shared it with anybody, and so really we still have work to do with our inventory. However, that said, in the final paragraph, what he really points to is that if our work has been done with sincerity and thoroughness, and not just our inventory work, but the first three steps, especially the steps involving our relationship with our Creator, if that's been done with thoroughness and sincerity, we already should start to see rewards or benefits just from writing the list. And the benefits, he points out, include a new perspective on our defects, and part of that perspective is seeing them as opportunities to grow closer to our Creator. So that's sort of a summary of what we're going to cover today, and let me jump into the text. So again, on 69, beginning with whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow towards it. And what is he talking about? I just want to hit a point that we talked about last week. He's really talking about through the inventory process, and in my case, it was working with my sponsor, prayer, meditation. It's about developing an ideal, a sexual ideal. Now, this is going to be unique to everyone, but I think what he's really aiming at is really rooting our sex conduct in a relationship with our higher power. And so he says it's really important to get an idea of what we want our ideal to be. By the way, excuse me, before I get too distracted, in this paragraph that we're reading right now, except for the last sentence, everything is direction or explanation, so it's in green for me. And then the last sentence is a reward. So whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in doing so, in so doing. In other words, and I think this is key, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. And here's the reward. The right answer will come if we want it. Now, I think there are several key points that I think we need to circle back on in this paragraph. Notice, you will sometimes hear in meetings, or you may think, there are no musts in AA. But I'm here to share, just in this paragraph alone, we have two musts. We must be willing to grow towards it, so that ideal, and we must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in so doing. So he's really talking about an attitude towards, really, we must, by this point, commit to the spiritual program of recovery. And I would say if we are not able to, or if we're working with someone who is not able to, or just flat out refuses, um, I mean, that is a matter between sponsor and sponsee. But if I was sponsoring somebody like that, my take would be that we needed to go back and spend time looking at the other steps then, and maybe even step one. Um, but anyway, we're going to assume that they're willing to grow. The person or we are willing to grow towards our ideal, and we're willing to make amends where we've done harm. Um, and as he says, he's really, by framing it this way, he's really treating sex no differently than any other matter here. Um, and again, a lot of it is rooted in uh, that spiritual relationship. And he's talking about meditation. So there's an assumption here. And the assumption is that regular spiritual time and meditation time is a part of our daily practice. And so, even though we're far from step 11 at this point, he's really making the point that by now, even though we're still early on in our journey, we've adopted certain practices and attitudes. And again, if we haven't or we're not willing, um, that means we need to go back and look at the other steps. So moving forward, God alone can judge our sex situation. This is explanation, by the way, as is the next sentence. Counsel with persons is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. Again, there's another assumption there, because I can tell you that for years, I just sort of glossed over those two sentences because I did not have the kind of my program. My program was meeting and fellowship based. It wasn't based in using the literature or using the big book to develop my spiritual relationship. And so the notion that, okay, God is the final judge, I could sort of agree to that in theory, but if you looked at how I conducted myself in my program, I really didn't have I really wasn't developing the kind of foundation that would allow that sentence to mean anything. I hope that makes sense. And then we finish out the last two sentences in this paragraph are a warning. We realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. And when he says fanatical, what he's meaning as, I guess he's trying to say prudish or restrictive. And what he's saying is we avoid hysterical thinking or advice. So again, now, obviously, and I just want to pause here, a sexual inventory is a very sensitive matter and a very private matter, and should only be done really between sponsor and sponsee. And I think even under the best of circumstances, it can be very uncomfortable. But I think if we, at least in my experience is once my sponsor focused me on what the book was talking about, which is treating it just like any other problem as a reflection of my spiritual relationship, it really became much easier. And it took the focus off all the gory or salacious details and really put it on the underlying malady. The other thing I want to say before we get into the next paragraph is for those of us who may have been around for a while or may have studied a bit of AA history, um, I don't want to dwell on it, but I will say there is, we may have found out, we may have learned that the author of this passage, our co founder, Bill W., was not without his own challenges in the area of sexual behavior. And but as I read, I didn't feel like, okay, we should make that a big focus here, only because as I read through the text and I really looked at it, it was coming to mind. I mean, I was thinking about the some of the details that I've read over the years, and but at the same time, when I looked at what he wrote here, it doesn't invalidate his own conduct or his own behavior, even after he got sober, does not invalidate the spiritual truths he's really directing us towards here. And I think that's the key point. That said, for anybody, because if I would have been in a meeting a few years ago and not known or heard anything about this, I'd be like, ooh, what did he do? And I'm not going to get into that, obviously. But I did put some links in the chat. There's a, and it's not just for his sexual conduct. It's a powerful biography of Bill W. called "My Name Is Bill W." And it's not conference approved. I'll say that. However, it is really balanced, and it is a really powerful testimony as to, despite his challenges and demons, just the grace that Bill embodied. Those links are in the chat. So anyway, moving forward, we have a question here. We have two questions. Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does this mean we are going to get drunk? So two questions, and then followed by explanation. Some people tell us so, but this is only a half truth. It depends on us and our motives. If we are sorry for what we have done and have an honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we will be forgiven and will have learned our lesson. That is all direction and explanation. And then we close it out. The rest of the paragraph is warning. However, it says, if we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. We are not theorizing. These are facts out of our experience. What I will say is that over the years, I have seen sexual conduct, behavior, really end up damaging people to the point where probably one of my first experiences was, and it wasn't, it was more relationship focused than, I guess, just pure sex. But my wife had a sponsee who got involved in it was textbook, boy meets girl on AA campus. I think she met a guy in rehab, no, in detox, and they formed a relationship, and right off the bat, and that was, I remember her. This was many years ago. This was 30 some years ago. Her name was Lisa, and and she died as a result of going out and alcohol poisoning. And then his name was Scott, and he died um, a couple years later. And so it really does call us to look at to stay rooted in this spiritual solution. All of the next paragraph is explanation. To sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, and for the strength to do the right thing. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves harder into helping others. And I think that statement is a pretty clear indication that the real danger with inappropriate sexual conduct, especially when we're sober, is that it's rooted in self, and it's rooted in what we are getting, or our own pleasure, or our own emotional satisfaction. And so notice what Bill is saying is we need to focus on other people and their needs. So we throw ourselves harder into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge, and just the definition of imperious is in the chat. If you aren't familiar with that word, it means domineering or overbearing. So it quiets the imperious urge. When to yield would mean heartache. If we have been, and then the next two sentences in this paragraph, the first two are explanation. If we have been thorough about our personal inventory, we have written down a lot. We have listed and analyzed our resentments. And now the next several sentences are rewards. And what we're going to see right now are the fourth step rewards. And just as an aside, you may know this already, but we talk about, the rewards of AA, and they'll say, somebody will say, well, read the rewards. And they're typically reading the ninth step or sometimes the 10th step rewards. But the truth of the matter is, and it's one of the reasons that we highlight the rewards, every step in our program, every one of the 12 steps has connected rewards. And here are the fourth step rewards. We have begun to comprehend their futility and their fatality. We have commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. We have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies, for we look on them as sick people. One of the things that I think is really important to recognize here is Bill's not just talking about awareness, like, we're connecting the dots, we're adopting a new attitude. What he's talking about is grace. What he's talking about is God steps in and begins to shape our thinking in a way that we are otherwise powerless to change on our own. And I think that's the key point. And then we close it out with explanation. We have listed the people we have hurt by our conduct and are willing to straighten out the past if we can. And to really sharpen the point on the spiritual dimension, the next paragraph really hones that. He says, in this book you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. We hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. And those two sentences are rewards. And then we close it out with explanation. If you have already made a decision and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, you have made a good beginning. That being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. And we should recall that Bill describes us as being the victims of a delusion. And so what we're really talking about with this is, even though we have not shared our inventory yet, if we have fully admitted our powerlessness, if we have come to a place of belief that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity, and if we have made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him, by doing those things, when we sit down to write our inventory, what we are going to do is we are going to begin to experience grace that does for us what we could not do for ourselves. But obviously, there's still more work to do, and in no way am I indicating, okay, we're good to go, we've got these permanent benefits, let's just, dust off our hands and kick back. No, there's still a lot of work to do. But I would say, if anybody, if you're working with or if you're experiencing struggles in any area of inventory, it's probably issues in the foundation in the first 3 steps that are coming up, and it's definitely something for discussion between you and your sponsor. So I think I'll leave it at that, and I'd like to open it up for discussion. So we finished, hooray, we finished the chapter, and so please feel free to talk about anything that I mentioned today, as well as particularly the notion about the spiritual malady and the spiritual and what we really need to do in terms of focusing our inventory on the spiritual relationship and those dynamics. So I'll turn it over to you.